Well, happy Thursday, folks. It has been a while since our last skipping lunch, and I have been waiting because I have a guest that I've been wanting to bring on for a while. Reached out to him, I like with great timing. I emailed him, I think 2 days before PAX Unplugged, because that was a great time to invite someone to come on the channel, and actually bumped into him at PAX Unplugged and talked for a couple minutes. But I'm really excited to have Bob World Builder on here today. So Bob, say hello to everybody.
Hey everybody, I'm Bob, aka Bob World Builder. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
It like I'm teeny little channel, so it does mean a lot when folks who are more, the known figures will come on and chat. And thank you so for I pretty much tackled you in the media room at PAX. You was like, Bob, here's my card, take it.
Yeah. Well, that was a helpful reminder because being at PAX was kind of overwhelming. It was my first big con, as we may talk about, but so there was a lot going on. So it was good to also really put the face to the email and meet you in person there. So that was cool.
I did do a little bit of a dance. You're like, well, I recognized your voice a little bit because I saw some of your interview with Kelsey, and I was like, yay, someone watched. So it was a good time. But yeah, it was fun to bump into you, and thank you so much for coming on. We have some good folks in chat. We'll field questions for that. BGD, good morning, Wes. You've got some Runejammer friends and their fans in the house. Runejammer was a blast. If you didn't hear about that at all, Bob, they did an online convention doing index card RPG. That was my first experience playing the game. I ran a one shot of it at PAX, which was fun. But we're here to.
I'm a Runejammer fan.
Oh, it's good. I really do enjoy index card RPG, but want to talk to you. And you have probably answered this questions more time than you can possibly count. But how did you get into this hobby? Like, this is a strange hobby space. How did you get into it?
Yeah. So I have answered this a few times. So I've kind of worked out my answer here. And that is that it really starts with just being interested in fantasy from a very young age. Because I guess I'll jump ahead to say that I only started playing tabletop role-playing games in 2015.
Okay.
So, I mean, actually, that's almost 10 years ago now, so it kind of flew by. But so I was always interested in fantasy, and a big part of that was just that my parents were pretty outdoorsy, and my dad really liked archery and bow hunting and stuff. So I was always drawn to characters like Robin Hood and then Legolas when I was reading Lord of the Rings as a kid.
Okay.
And that kind of, spiraled me into liking video game RPGs. I was a big Zelda fan for a long time. And then some more obscure games on the PlayStation. If anybody in the chat might remember, Champions of Norath or was one of them. And then more popular ones like Elder Scrolls, of course.
Okay.
And it was through playing those games that I didn't realize were heavily based on D&D, even just the way the character stats and everything works.
Yeah.
That then when finally one of my best friends asked me to play, or asked if, a couple of us would be interested in playing Dungeons and Dragons, my gut reaction was still wait a minute. All I really know about D&D is seeing a couple clips in sitcoms and cartoons over the years where it's the nerdiest of the nerdy characters dressed up and doing goofy voices, and there's weird stuff all over the table. So I really had no idea what the game was.
And your friend thought you'd be perfect for that.
Exactly.
Yes.
And he said well, it's basically like these games we play, except we're doing it a little more like a board game, or just not a video game. So I was like, okay, yeah, we'll try this. It sounds fun. And then from the very first session, I just had such a blast and was just instantly hooked, because it just opened my mind to be oh, so we can at least try to do anything. And that was
there's no guardrails, right? You just go do whatever you want. So what was your first session then with 5e?
So what I like to say about this is how this whole first campaign is really it was one session that actually turned into a year-long campaign.
Okay.
Um, my GM had the 5e player's handbook, but we didn't really use it. It's because basically he's still super into homebrew,
Uh-huh.
and I don't even think he like opened it when we were making our characters, because he was like he already had some of it in his head. He had run some games for his brother and his brother's friends before, and that's kind of how he got into it and then led it into our group. But basically, he just asked us like, "What kind of character do you want to play?" And then he would like either pick a class or pick and choose different things from like other classes or subclasses, whatever. So we built it all out like very homebrew out of the gate. So it was like D20 roll high
Yeah, yeah,
using
yeah.
those stats. But and actually, like the evidence I have, not right on hand here, but in the other room, is that like we all had character sheets from a couple different editions of D&D,
Okay.
because we
Okay.
didn't even know. Like we had no idea what we were doing with the edition. So while we were kind of playing 5e, it was like in the slimmest sense of the word, really.
That's awesome. So when
Yeah.
when I first started, I never really played as a kid because I never had a group, and I was pre-online. So I started
Yeah.
with Moldvay Cook Basic Expert, and then got the advanced
Okay.
books because I did like split race class. But I was still using the Moldvay Cook Basic character
Yeah.
sheets to make advanced classes. I'm like, well, nothing fits on this. I don't know what's going on. And then I saw the advanced sheet. It's like, whoa, that's confusing. So I think
Yeah.
it's the age old, it's the time honored tradition. Yeah, I mean, this is like what the number is, but we just do whatever we want to do, which is fun.
Yeah, for us, it was seeing how, like, wait a minute, like my sheet doesn't have all those skills that yours has on it. Like some of the third edition sheets that some of our characters had like 2 or 3 times as many skills available,
Yeah,
and
they're all like
things
this
like that were
big.
kind of confusing. And like, wait a minute, how come yours has a space for like 3 different kinds of armor class and mine just has one? But we figured it
That's all.
out.
It just pick a number and roll over it. It's fine. Go.
Yeah.
And then I have to ask, because you started kind of with Zelda. What was your first Zelda?
My first Zelda was Ocarina of Time, or Ocarina of Time. The pronunciation always slips my mind.
Yeah,
But
Ocarina. So
yeah,
you
on
were
Nintendo 64.
64 era, so in the
Yeah.
90s. So not too far beyond me. I'm not feeling too ancient. Um, I am, but I'm not feeling it right now. So at some point, you're playing the game and you love it, and this is it. It takes off, and somewhere in the back of your brain goes, "I should do a YouTube channel." So, like, how long into playing did that happen? And then what was kind of like the trigger in your mind? You go, "Yeah, I think I have something I can say that people would want to watch, or at least that I
Uh,
want to say."
yeah. So it was over three. It was around like 3 or 4 years into playing, because once I started, I pretty much like didn't stop. Or like if there were times when we didn't have a campaign going,
Uh huh.
I was like watching a ton of Critical Role in those times or stuff
Gotcha.
like that. Like I kind of needed the constant like TTRPG stimulation in my life, like to some degree.
Okay.
And so in other times when like we weren't playing as much, I would just be like homebrewing and world building stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I got to the point of being like, well, learning that the DMs Guild existed, and then thinking like, maybe I could post some of my stuff there and like try to earn some money off of like publications, basically. So I put up my first supplement, which was like a pack of a couple like bird folk races
Oh,
for
neat.
5e, basically.
Okay.
And and after I posted it, I was really proud of it and everything, and I got it to a pretty good like quality, like visually speaking and everything, and found art for it, like worked with a couple artists and stuff. And and then realized like, wait a minute, no one's gonna like know that this PDF exists.
Right.
Like there's too
How's
many things on DM's Guild.
right?
So yeah, so I guess I must have seen some other reviews around that time of other people talking about DM's Guild stuff, or at least just D&D books in general, because I was watching a lot of D&D YouTube, like I said, not just Critical Role. Back then it was Matt Colville, WebDM, oh man, WASD 20 was one of my favorite channels for
Okay.
sure. And I was like, well, maybe I could start my own channel. Like this will help me like get even more familiar with the game, because I wanted to do it from an educational perspective too, of like, this is how you can play, because I had
Okay.
definitely had the motivation of wanting to get more and more people into this, because it felt like something that I had only just discovered practically as, basically as an adult. And it's like, I wish I found this earlier in life. So if
Gotcha.
I can help do that for some more people, that'd be awesome. And then I can, if I build an audience, I could like talk about things that I publish on DM's Guild, whatever. So yeah, it kind of built up from both the educational perspective and from like a marketing
I was going to
perspective,
say
I
it's
guess,
part
like right away.
commercial, part education. You're good. It's
Yeah.
like it's good. That's, I mean, it's a really cool thing. You just had that moment. It's like, well, I need to do this, and now I have something to say. Someone
Yeah.
in chat, BGD, pointed out this is the origin story of Barty McFly.
Oh yeah.
That's a,
Wow. So
it's a
that's a real like a throwback there almost, because have you heard of Barty
I
McFly
know
before, maybe?
Marty McFly, so
Right.
I'm
So
these
Barty
kids these
McFly
days. No, go ahead. Who's Barty McFly?
Barty McFly is in many of my, I really don't know how many, but there was like a streak of videos, it felt like,
Okay,
probably 3 years ago, really before my channel like blew up, so to
okay,
speak. Where yeah, I would occasionally just reference like when I would need to reference like a character, like
okay,
whether it's talking about rules or whatever, and it was always this Aarakocra, so bird folk
okay,
bard,
okay.
called Barty McFly. This
Oh, that's
super
awesome.
punny name. And eventually I had like art for him made. And I've realized like, man, I really like have let that go. Like I don't mention him anymore. And I could have kind of had this character like for my channel to you might know Professor Dungeon
He has
Master's like
Deathbringer. Yep,
Deathbringer.
yep.
I could have had Barty McFly. So yeah, I've been thinking about trying to like reintegrate that somehow. But but yeah, that's actually really funny. I never quite made the connection about how my first supplement was all these bird folk, and then ended up
As
having
Barty
that
Barty
become a bit of
McFly.
a staple.
Hey, bring back. You need a mascot. Bring the mascot in. It'd be good.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
default name for all NPCs, if I just make one up on the fly, is Steve.
Oh, Steve.
It's just
Okay.
everybody's just Steve. It's
Yeah.
like it's
I mean,
Steve.
I really thought you were about to say Bob, because I've heard that many times.
No,
Is people will tell me how, yeah, they have an
apparently,
NPC like.
so they had they were on Roll for Combat. They were looking at the most common names on D&D
Yes,
Beyond, and
I did
apparently the
see
most
that name
common
there
name
as
is
well.
Bob. Okay, it's Bob. There you go. But
Yeah.
I do. But so I came up with. I have a guy when I was doing a fundraiser of a one shot day. I needed someone to kind of advertise it, so I came up with Steve the Dragon, who had just threatened to
Oh,
like eat people and burn them their house if they didn't buy tickets. So Steve is actually the official mascot for DMTLs. I have not mentioned him in a long time though. I had artwork done for him and everything, which is
well,
fun.
I guess follow my lesson here and keep it up, and
Keep it
keep
up.
bringing Steve into it. Yeah.
We will bring Steve back. He talks with a fake
Put
British
Steve on a
accent.
T-shirt. Yeah.
And he's conscious, like, I'll do comic strips of him, and like the thing will be like, yeah, human resources tried to fire Steve. He ate them. So it's good times. So you are now a full-time career YouTuber, but
Yep.
what did you do before you were Bob? And I'm just going to put this in as a reference, and we'll talk about later. Before you were Bob,
Sure.
the world builder, which that has
Yeah.
more meaning than people know. But what did you do
It
before you were
does.
doing the YouTube?
I came out of school with degrees in environmental science, but while I was getting my graduate degree in that, I realized that I really wanted to try getting into environmental education
Okay.
in one way or another. Like I was really into just like hiking and camping and stuff like that, like growing up as well, just because I had mentioned like being in the outdoors.
I
And
should say that someone in the chat pointed out that in real life you're a ranger.
Uh, if I had to pick a class, that would be the one
Okay.
probably.
Sorry,
But
I'm sorry to
yeah,
interrupt you.
no, that I like it. And yeah. So what was I get? Oh, what was exactly the question? Yeah, now I did get sidetracked.
What were you doing before you were Bob
Jobs.
the world
Right,
builder?
right. So yeah, I studied environmental science. Realized I want to also like teach this in a way, and yeah, I thought about. I might have even applied to like state park kind of ranger positions at the
Okay.
time. It could have been a real ranger, but but I ended up, the first job that I got right away was just a part-time uh like, what's the word I'm looking for? Outdoor education facility. It was year round. So it's the kind of thing where like they do a summer camp over the summer,
Yeah.
but like throughout the year, it's just like community programs
Or school
where we'd
groups
be like
coming in,
leading
that sort of
people.
thing.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
either school group coming in or leading people on like hikes around like our properties. Um, and that was super fun. Like I loved this work. The thing was that, especially being, I mean, this field in general, but definitely being a part-time job was not like super sustainable, just as a career path, unfortunately. And so but luckily I managed to find a full-time job doing this sort of thing that
Okay.
was at another year-round facility, that specifically, and then I moved for this. So I moved from PA to Maryland, and I was, yeah, basically on a weekly basis. Like we'd have students, typically middle schoolers, come in for a week of environmental education, and like character education as well was a
Yeah.
big part of it. Um, so yeah, so I was doing that like while I was starting my channel then, because
Okay.
those jobs overlapped, and gradually the YouTube stuff just like kind of, well, yeah, it was growing gradually for a while, but then there were, ironically, a couple videos I made where we were doing stuff outdoors
Mm-hmm.
that, for whatever reason, really resonated with many, many people. And that's kind of what like put my channel on the map in that way, where like suddenly people, found it. And I already had like a couple years worth of videos at that point. So
Mm-hmm.
things like grew really fast at that point. Um, yeah.
So
And I mean, and ultimately, I guess to talk about the transition, it was unfortunately that the pandemic kind of almost shut down that
yeah.
job completely
Yeah.
because schools weren't doing field trips anymore,
Mm-hmm.
sensibly. And we like they did change the business model in a way, so I still had that job for a year, uh, like through the pandemic, but it
Mm-hmm.
was very different. Like it wasn't what I applied for anymore.
Right.
Like it
Yeah.
really wasn't outdoor education. We were helping kids with their virtual learning, and it was still very rewarding as a position, but it wasn't what I like wanted to do anymore.
Gotcha.
And then it really coincided with like, now I really think I could be doing this full time. So I didn't officially go full time until about a year ago now, I think. Or actually, no, it's almost 2 years now.
It's
It was April
2024,
20.
whatever. Well, see, the
Yeah, April
pandemic years don't
2022.
count.
It's such a blur. It's such a blur. But April 2022 was when I went full time.
Okay,
Yeah.
so environmental education was not a sustainable career path, so you decided to
At
get
least
into
for me,
doing
I
full-time
think it can
YouTuber.
be, and I definitely like commend people who do it. Like if I wasn't doing this, I would be trying my darndest to like make an environmental education YouTube channel now or something, because I feel like there's other ways that
Uh-huh.
maybe it could have worked. But yeah.
Hey, I mean, you, as someone pointed out, you were channeling your interests. Mic
Yeah.
drop.
Yeah.
Boom. I don't know. So Mage's Musing just asked, how does Bob World Builder end up married to a world destroyer?
Right.
Is there an
So
epic
that
romance behind that whirlwind romance? What did I miss? You
So
ever?
that would be a reference to my wife, Grace,
Okay.
who occasionally, when she's in videos, and we do run a podcast together where she goes by Grace World Destroyer, as the
Oh.
counterpart to my Bob World Builder.
Okay.
And yeah, and so yeah, and so what a lot of people usually ask is if I like got Grace into RPGs or vice versa, and we were actually both like independently into tabletop games
Okay.
when we met. And that was before I like moved to Maryland and stuff. Like we moved down there together then, and then we
Okay.
ended up moving back here. And yeah, we got married also about 2 years ago now. So, or well, it'll be going on 2 years, but yeah.
Congratulations. I like the fact
Thanks.
that you have, so it's like, I'm going to be on the podcast. Uh-huh. And I'm choosing a name just to keep you humble. If you build it, I will destroy it. Okay. Thank you, dear.
Yep.
Good job. Um, so, and as far as your videos, you had mentioned, we had talked beforehand, like one of your videos that really took off. Was that one of the ones that you were doing
Right.
the travel distance of
Mhm.
just you doing a lap around like a state park for an entire day?
All day. Yeah.
And I'm sitting here watching because it's like 20 minutes long. I'm like, I don't know why I'm watching this. This is so, but it's so compelling. I want to see if you can do it.
I've heard that exact same comment from a number of people who I've talked to the video about in person, where they're like, I don't know why, but I couldn't stop watching this
No,
one.
because you want to like, does he succeed? He's got like, I feel like I've been on the journey with you. This is great. So I love it. So that was really cool. What are some of the other videos that people really kind of latched onto to
Oh
start?
man. Well, yeah, so the biggest video I think that I had, well, actually it's kind of funny. The first like video I had
Uh-huh.
that felt like it blew up, and by like my, I don't know if you've heard of like YouTube creators talking about how like the numbers just kind of go out the window after a while because you get so accustomed to like the numbers you're used to seeing.
Yeah, I'm
So
not
like
quite there yet, but that's okay.
yeah,
So,
but so what happened was like my first video, I probably had less than 1,000 subscribers at this time.
okay.
But my first video that really like caught people's attention was a basically just like announcement video about the I see someone mentioning it actually, the Icefire Peak
Okay.
starter set.
Okay. Okay.
Because when that box set was announced, this was in like 2019 when I was like in the very early days of my channel. There was still almost nobody doing like D&D news. Like people weren't really talking about announcements. It was mostly just like
Huh.
DM guide videos at the
Okay.
time still.
Okay.
So I think I made this video and it was like, compared to like I think of like the quality of my videos now, like I look back on some of those and it's like, wow, I can't believe people watch this because it gets pretty rough.
Yeah.
But hey, it got the point across that like they're making this cool new box set, and I was really excited about it. And I think I was just the only person with a video about the announcement, and so a lot of people watched it. And then I happened to really like the box set, so I made a whole series about it, and that like I think really is what like gathered my initial audience was like people watching these videos because I made a video about every single quest in there. It was basically a series of like tiny one shots if you're not familiar with the box set.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so I made a video about each one. And actually, I guess this was before she was Grace World Destroyer, but I also had gameplay videos where it was me and Grace like running through each of them just as like, like just a one-on-one, like one DM, one player
Okay.
session for each of those quests. So it was kind of like the DM guide and then like here's our actual experience with it.
Okay.
And yeah,
And that was
that was that was
that
the
was kind
early
of the hook.
days.
You got that hook in. It was nice. You were one of
Yeah.
the you were one of like the OGs getting just kind of like general review news stuff coming out.
Yeah, because it was actually right around that time. Like I think of like the news when I think of like D&D news today, it's like Ted from Nerd Immersion, if you're familiar with
Yep.
his channel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he posts videos like all the time,
Yeah.
and his channel had existed for like several years already, I think, but it was around that time that he also started doing the news stuff. So yeah, it really like, and then of course he like went and totally ran with it.
Right. Right. Right.
But yeah, he really like broke the mold for sure. But it was around that time that yeah, nobody else was really talking about the new releases at all.
I
Um,
I popped
yeah.
literally. I got back in the pandemic, and I was like, okay,
Hmm.
news sources. I went to Apple News, and like, there's
Yeah.
nothing. So and now, I mean, we have like a bunch of YouTubers now, and then of course you have Linda Cordega who is doing
Yep.
what we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
Who is like an actual real life journalist doing stuff. So good
Yes.
job. But then you have folks like us that just do crazy videos every now and again. But let's
Yep.
talk about last January
Yeah.
because
So 2023.
it feels like it was 10 years ago. And
It
it
kind
was
of
like,
does.
it
Yeah.
really does. And it was only a year, but we had this certain company, the company that shall not be named. It attempted to basically take our hobby space, flip it upside down, and shake it for loose change. I mean, that's really
Yeah.
what it amounted to.
Yeah.
So you are, at that point, you're a year into becoming a full-time professional D&D YouTuber.
Yeah, actually.
When did you first hear about this? And we're going to put it in quotes, draft of this new open gaming license.
So yeah, that's a great way to begin this. I had heard people talking about it. So I don't remember the exact time frame of this, but it was at least weeks, 2 months, where I had heard like a sponsor that I had worked with a number of times when we had just like a meeting. Uh, he like casually brought up like, hey, did you hear about like this possibility? It was just like an idea that people had like floated. So
Mm-hmm,
actually
mm-hmm.
well before talk of any physical document, just like, hey, people are talking about how like there might not be an OGL for
Yeah, that's like
whatever the next
November,
iteration is.
December, it's starting to hit. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really don't even know if it like I'm not gonna lie, it could have been before they had even announced the like next evolution of D&D coming in 2024.
Oh wow.
Because
Okay.
it was just very broad discussion of like people think there won't be an OGL for the next one, but
Right.
that was it. And then that did kind of become a little more substantiated. There's a channel, Indestructo Boy,
Uh-huh.
Taryn,
Yeah.
who does like a lot of he has like a lot of like 5e classes, and now he's making his own game. But he had apparently like a really early leak that like this is gonna happen. And then I don't know what the time gap was between him and then someone in a Discord that I'm a part of,
Okay.
who actually I think it was one of the Roll for Combat guys saying like, hey, we're pretty sure that we have like a verified draft of this new OGL now.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
like I
Roll for
said, I don't know
Combat had
what the
like the
gap,
language
yeah,
on their stream. Yeah.
I don't know what the gap was between Taryn and and the Roll for Combat guys. But when the Roll for Combat guys shared that in this Discord that I was in, that was only like a day or two, I think, before they broke the news then.
Okay.
And I was still like kind of in disbelief and kind of at the idea that, oh, well, that's just going to be for the new game. They can't touch the old OGL still,
Right.
like was what I thought. And I think what many people thought at the time, because it
Mm-hmm.
was, whatever the language was about it being irrevocable or perpetual or
Yep.
whatever,
Yep.
we just kind of like hung on those words. But then actual lawyers were like, well, no, they could actually get rid of this if they wanted to. So
Because the language of law has changed in the last 20 years, and so they can
yeah,
screw you over. So now you're a full-time YouTuber. This is your
right.
gig. What is your response when you realize the scope of what they're attempting?
Yeah, so I want to say it was probably even like a week after the news broke that I think then people realized like, oh, they could wreck the old one. And that's when I was worried, because I was like, okay, what does this actually mean? Um, I mean, yeah, I was definitely thinking, looking out for number one. I'm like, what does this mean for me who just made this my full-time job,
Yeah.
talking about these games? But then, of course, like I also publish stuff, because there's
Mm-hmm.
like I have the side of videos. I do also like publish things.
Mm-hmm.
So like, is the publishing just totally gone now?
Right.
And like, what about all these people I've worked with over the years? Like at this point, I've to make my publications, I collaborate with other writers and with artists and everything. So it's like, and what
Mm-hmm.
about all these people? Like, this
Yeah.
is ridiculous. Um, so yeah, I think initially I was just like anxious and just trying to wait for facts, really, because
Okay.
there was just so much speculation, and is what it felt like anyway. So I was trying to, yeah, I guess just not get too caught up in it, but it was extremely hard. Like in that same Discord where the news first came in, like it's basically a bunch of other, like a handful of other creators, I should say, and we were all just like talking to each other nonstop about like, what does this mean? Like so below the surface, I was very nervous about it. Making videos wise, I just turned to like, well, here are these other games that I've been interested in for a long time, and I haven't had the time to play them because most of my like free time playing the games is also like coordinated with like it's something I'm gonna make a video about.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I just spat out a couple videos about like, hey, here are these games that have been on my radar for a while that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, you did
Um,
Dungeon Crawl Classics really early on. Like in,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, because that was one that I had the quick start on my shelf, actually, for about as long as I like had a YouTube channel at all. But I hadn't actually played it. I just like read through it a couple times,
Okay.
and then finally got around to like reading the whole thing. And then I can't remember. I actually no, I must have had the core book before the OGL, because I ended up having it in that video that I eventually made about it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but it was around that time where then I was like, okay, I'm really gonna like finally play this with some friends, and then I got to play in a couple sessions as well, and yeah, and really had fun with that, and just like that's just another game that I kind of like added to the roster on my channel, because that was actually, I guess, like the end result. I feel like
Right.
is and I at some point talked about this in a couple of those videos, saying like, well, this channel was clearly only about D&D 5e for a very long time,
Mm-hmm.
or you could even say like D&D, because like there were occasional ones where I talked about some previous editions,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but then that I just really wanted to open it up and be like, well, now I'm gonna at least talk about things from a like D20 general fantasy perspective, and then occasionally talk about like other games as well. And that's why, like, actually my video that went up this week captured 15 different games that I played all throughout 23, and like probably half of them, maybe a third of them, like aren't even D20 systems.
It's a very
Some
nice
and a
set.
bunch of them aren't even fantasy. Yeah,
Hmm.
so
Um,
really just decided to like I'm just gonna try to experiment with a ton of games now and see what else sticks. And
well,
yeah,
and you changed your intro because before it was always like, this
yeah,
is how
that's
we
true.
explain to having more fun playing D&D, and
Yeah,
now it's more it's let's talk about how to have more fun playing. Do you say TTRPGs or
RPGs.
just RPGs?
Yeah, yeah,
Although your tagline is up in the front, it's still like D&D up in the up in your
yeah.
artwork.
And that was still a recent thing, just because I wanted to change the banner. Um, but uh, but yeah, I don't know. There's still that dichotomy of like, well, like D&D, frankly, is still like the search term for RPGs. It
Yeah,
is the Xerox, it is the Band-Aid, it is the Kleenex of this hobby. So it's still like I want to frame things that way,
yeah.
even if the video could apply to any other
Hmm.
D20 fantasy game. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if I reviewed D&D products, I'd probably be growing a lot faster. But I'm like, but I don't want to play those games. And let's talk about the 15 games that you played last
Okay.
year, because I went and counted. I was like, I have to, and I'm 4 short of you, so I did 11. So I was
Well, I
really
was very fortunate to be invited to play a lot of games as a product of the OGLs,
we will.
controversy.
Yeah, we'll talk
So
about that in a little bit too.
yeah,
Um, but so you said you were playing some that were not D20 based systems. Was this kind of like your first experience with non D20 based systems?
yeah. Actually, I don't think I'd ever play. Well, not entirely true. I had played a little bit of Call of Cthulhu, which I guess is like D100, D100 roll under.
Okay, okay.
But that was the only other RPG I had played prior to 2023 that was not a D20.
So you sit down
And
to play
yeah.
Easy D6, and you're like, "What are we playing Monopoly now? Like, what's going on?" Like, just
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm trying to think now if I had even that might be the first D6 game that I played was actually Easy D6.
for
I
me
don't
that
yeah,
was as well. Yeah.
yeah.
It was really fun. I do have someone pointed out that so I had talked to you about it, but I'm putting on a small, very teeny micro convention in April called EcclesiaCon, and King Eric the Greatest of all just pointed out, do I have to wear a robe while attending Ecclesiastical Con? No, I don't, because I would just look like a reject from Hogwarts. So just come as you are. If you have purple hair, tattoos, piercings, I know, as long as you're clothed, would you come? I'm sure there's somebody in the channel going, "Well, that's a challenge,"
Yeah.
which would be good. So, of all these games that you played, then, like, did this kind of broaden your appreciation for the wider space of role
I
playing games?
yes. I mean, I guess it's like that's a thing that I there's like the phrasing there just reminded me of like what I'm seeing a lot now in comments is like, oh, it's cool that Bob's like discovering all these games. And like, yes, I'm discovering like these specific games, but I think many people, of course, who like have played tons of other games
Yeah.
before, now look at me and think like, oh, I'm just learning that other games exist. Whereas like really, it's like, no, I actually heard about Dungeon Crawl Classics in the very early days of playing D&D for me, which again was like 2015. But I remember seeing the book at a like a huge game store I went to when I was on a trip
Okay.
in Portland, Oregon. There's this massive bookstore there called Powell's Books. It takes up
Nice.
like a whole city block, and they had a huge game section. And I was looking at like yeah, a bunch of third party stuff and like looking at these other games. But at the same time, like that was still I think when I was in my either my first campaign or it was just like complete homebrew era where we
Okay.
were still just making it up.
Uh
Like it
huh.
might not have been the first campaign. So I was like, well, I don't know if I need like this other giant rule book. Like, look, I picked up the DC or yeah, the DCC
It's an
core rule book. And
improvised
like,
weapon.
yeah, and I was like, well, yeah, I don't think I need this whole thing. So that's why when eventually I discovered the quick start guide, I like took that right away. Um, but um, but yeah, so I've known about these games for a long time and had some appreciation for them. But I guess yeah, I was still for a very long time in the camp of like, well, why would I like play one of those
Hmm.
games when I know this system so well
Yeah.
and I'm free to homebrew it however I want, as my friends and I have always done. Um, so yeah, so then I guess it was at some point, I mean, really the OGL was kind of the tipping point of being like, now I'm going to make a point to actually play all these other games. Like
Yeah.
I knew about them, I appreciated their existence and that other people loved them, but I was like, for me, this is fine. I don't really like need to dabble so
Hmm.
much. Except I guess for things like I said, Call of Cthulhu, where I was like, this is very different. Like
Yeah.
this is a totally different setting, rules, everything. So I'll if I'm gonna make a jump, it's got to be something far.
Okay.
But yeah, then the OGL showed me like, well, now it's time to play some games that really do capture the same feel, or I should say a very similar feel.
Right.
But what do they do differently? And that's kind of what that last video was really all about. Was like, here's the basics. Here's how many of them will feel so similar, but they also do this other cool thing.
Hmm.
Was what I
Hmm.
was trying to point out with that one. Yeah.
So and so true, but there is a difference in appreciation when you're playing the game. And
Yeah.
I was the same way. Like when Easy D6 came out, I was like, I like my D, like I want to roll a D20. Why would I roll a Monopoly die? And I had a couple people on Twitter who were like, no, you have to try this. So I ended up getting the book and reading. It's like, yeah, I have to run this. So I started writing one shots for it, for folks. So that kind of changed my opinion of it. So now I'm like, okay, D6 games are fine. Um,
Yeah.
what was like, I don't want to put you on the spot because like Bob likes this game.
Sure.
What was your of the 15 you played that were not D&D last year? What was
Yeah.
kind of like your favorite experience? Let's put it that way. So not your favorite game, like this is the best game, but what was your favorite experience playing?
Oh man.
Because that can have so many different aspects to it.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting because I'm not gonna lie, like a lot of them were very fun, like just one-off experiences. So
Yeah.
like they kind of have not only the novelty of it being a new game, but like many of them were with players I hadn't played with before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's kind of tough to pick, but I might have to just say Professor Dungeon Master's Deathbringer
Oh,
because
okay.
he ran the game, and it was me, my wife, and one of my good friends, and Stephen Glicker from Roll for Combat was a player, and we had one of the Nerdarchy guys in there too, if you're familiar with Nerdarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was just like a great game, and I've watched Professor Dungeon Master's channel for years. Like I was watching him before I had a channel.
Okay. Okay.
So it was like kind of this long, like weird progression of also like growing as a creator in the space. And then you just kind of like, you comment on like their videos enough that then they recognize your name. And then
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, they watched some of my videos. So like, and so we've kind of grown to become something of friends over the last like couple years, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And this was one of the first few times I met him in person. And but this was the first time that I saw him like running a game actually.
Okay.
Uh and it was just so like theatrical, and like it was a module that he wrote and that he's run, I think he said like 50 or more
So he
times.
knows
So
it
he knew
back and
this
forward.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny too because he's like reading index cards for like of his own notes and stuff, and it's his own game and everything. So
Uh-huh.
it's just such a like this really like singular experience of like this is the creator of the game like running his game with his module that he's run, and it's like so many times, and I'm doing this like with my wife and one of my best friends, and yeah, it was just such a fun time, and it helps that I got like the killing blow on the BBG. So
Oh, that
yeah.
definitely helps. Like, yeah, of course I won.
Yeah.
So what, like Professor Dungeon Master is one of these people that I really would love to talk to, but like when he's
Yeah.
running a game, does that like same type of personality like
Oh
travel
man.
through? Is he more laid back?
It's actually, I would say no, he's much more like the game was very fast
I
paced.
mean, he's
Uh
hardcore. Like, there's no devices at
yeah.
my table. So yeah, okay,
There was
go.
well, yeah. But it was also like I guess trying to describe it, like he was literally like not like shouting, but just like, what are you doing right now? And then like he would almost start to get like what the next person is doing, like right after you rolled your dice and you're like counting up the numbers. So it
Gotcha.
was like it was incredible. It was extremely fast paced. And then when you say like his persona and everything, he actually immaculately put on the perception of a number of different NPCs.
Awesome.
Again, that I guess he has practiced over the years, of
Uh-huh.
course, too. So it was really cool to have that experience. But yeah, it's like I don't want to say he's like a different person running the game
No, no,
from in
no, no,
his
no, no. Yeah, I
videos
just want to,
because he's so great.
yeah.
But yeah, as a game master, like it was just a really thrilling session.
What I'm interested to see is like how much of his dungeon mastering is part of his YouTube channel. So,
I
but
think it all comes through. We did have a character die at 0. We I'm trying to like I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's Deathbringer is also like a distillation of basically a bunch of his house rules.
yeah,
Um, so yeah.
and he's working on a full-fledged version of it, right? So it's going from the pamphlet to a much more larger game.
Yeah. I don't know how much like he's revealed about the full game yet, but I think in that session we were playing something close to it. And I mean, and that was already 2 months ago now. I think he's like actively working on writing it. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's going to go from the pamphlet to 20 pages. It'll be good. We kind of answered this already, but I'll put it up just because Roll for
Sure.
Taraka put it out. What was your first experience playing D&D, Bob? Which we'll get you. But
Oh,
Roll for Taraka wants fun. I played it with Gary Gygax, and this is where
no.
everybody in chat just goes, "Oh, very good." I hear he was a lot of fun to play with. So, but like, so you just played with a friend that kind of sucked you in.
Yeah, it was my best friend, and I mean, yeah, basically, like I've grown up in the same like area, and I just have a couple of like friends I've known my whole life. So it was him, like one of my best friends running it, really like my one of my oldest friends running it, and then a couple of my other like best friends in this session, and then a couple other like mutual friends too. I guess it was we had like probably 6 or 7 people like in this campaign usually. Um, and yep, it was just like in one of their parents' basement, pretty classic
Like literally,
setting, I
we
guess.
were the cliche. So
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, to talk about the first, well, yeah, let me see the actual question. Uh, oh, I think I missed it now.
it's
Where'd
Roll
it go?
for
Oh, yeah,
Taraka. It's not too far.
what was your first experience playing D&D? So it was just with a bunch of great friends, and like I said, we didn't really follow rules much besides like rolling high, and yeah, so it was very homebrew and very realizing that we could try to do anything.
Gotcha. Which is, I mean,
Yeah.
that's perfect for Professor Dungeon Master because he's just like rules don't matter, just set a number and roll. Which is
Yep.
sure. I mean, it's a lot faster to do that. Index
Yep.
Card RPG just made that a literal rule. Here's the number, beat it.
Yeah.
I was joking that Bob played it with Gary Gygax. I wish I played with Gary. Sorry, Roll. I thought you were serious. That would have been awesome. Mage's Musings wants to point out that, or no, what's it? King Eric, the greatest of all, wants to point out that he played chess with death once. Good thing I won. So yes, we'll go for the deep cut Seventh Seal reference, which I actually watched that in college. And Mage's Musings beat death at Candyland, which arguably is not even a game. So that's fun. And Twister too. So now we're going full into Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Good stuff. So let's talk about conventions. So,
Sure.
oh, John Three Storytellers here. Hello from Texas. Hi, John. How are you? Glad you're feeling better, sir. Um, so up until this past winter, you'd never been to a convention before at all.
Not the winter, but this past year. Yeah, I went to 2 conventions or I guess 3 in 2023, and the
Okay.
2 prior to PAX were just much smaller
Okay.
and much smaller tabletop presence. They were revealed to me like I really thought it was bigger tabletop scene, but it
Okay.
was
Okay.
much more. Both of them, ironically, were about like vintage video games.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's like I'm
and
a little out of. Okay.
yeah, so I mean, it was fun. Hey, I
Yeah.
was really what I told a bunch of friends after going to 2 of them now was like, hey, I'm kind of this close to like buying an N64 so I can play original
Yeah.
Zelda Ocarina of Time again.
Yep. 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 Yep.
but
Yep.
yeah, it was Too Many Games Con in Philly or like the greater Philadelphia area,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
and then I went to Pittsburgh Gaming Expo
Okay.
across the state from me.
But PAX U is the
Um,
first tabletop one you
Yeah,
went
but
to.
PAX was the first, hey, this is like pretty much all tabletop. And wow, was it like probably, I don't know, several times as big as either of those like put together. So
That's it. Yeah.
yeah,
It's a big. It was like my first time was last year or 2 years ago, and I was like,
yeah.
I don't know where I'm going. Um, so you kind of talked to this already, but so many of the relationships that happen inside tabletop role playing game spaces happen because you're working with someone or because you've met them at a con. So I
Yeah.
have a couple friends that I met at PAX U that first year that I went, and was one of the reasons why I'm doing interviews now, because like, you just need to go do this. I'm like, okay. Um, but you had these relationships beforehand. So, and
Yeah.
you kind of talked. So you just kind of kept, you're making videos and just kept on commenting on other people's videos, and that's kind of how you made the connection with folks.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it's funny, like, it might sound cliché, but, like, I am as much a fan of the space, like, as anybody
Mm-hmm.
else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, I frankly, like, don't comment as much as I think I used to because, like, sometimes it feels like I'm,
I'm
like,
stepping
cutting
in
in on the
now.
video or
Yeah.
something, like,
Yeah.
especially if I'm there, like, really early, to a video, like, when I see, like, oh, like, I know the times that, like, Professor DM's video goes up, I'll usually only comment early if it's like if I have like a pretty good joke or something.
Okay.
But
Okay.
other than that, yeah, I don't comment as much. But that's honestly how it started. Was like the relationship started was
Mm-hmm.
just like, yeah, I was a fan of a lot of these creators for a long time, and then they became aware that like I wasn't just someone commenting on their videos. Like, oh, he's also making stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then with certain creators, like you just share similar perspectives on the game,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then it's like, oh, and hey, and then like you're talking about their videos and your videos, and it just for some of these people, it's like very organic, and then it's like, hey, we should hang out or like play a game virtually sometime, and then like, oh, when we go to these cons, like let's make sure we're like meeting up somewhere, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it was kind of funny because like I started my channel in 2019. So I actually had plans to go to my first con in 2020. And then obviously that didn't happen. So
Yeah.
I didn't like get the con experience only until this year now, finally, like coming back as they're kind of coming back on the scene. Yeah.
Yeah. PAX is a lot of fun this year.
Mm.
What folks don't realize is such a small space.
It is. Yeah.
And like I was talking to you beforehand. Like, I'm thankful that folks who are more established in the space are willing to even come on and be like talking with me, because I'm just this guy over in the corner going, "Hey, I'm here."
Yeah. I mean,
But it
not
is,
to interrupt,
yeah,
but yeah, it's like that's still like I am also literally just like the guy in the corner over
yeah.
here.
Oh,
It just so happens that like I made a handful of videos that for whatever reason a lot of people
people,
really love.
ev-
And then as you get more support, you're able to put more time into it,
mhm,
etc. And I was in a career where I specifically was like, well, this could actually be better for me like in the long term. So like a lot of things made sense.
uh-huh, uh-huh,
But I think that's it, is that especially in the TTRPG space, like it's even relative to YouTube, it's a kind of a corner,
yeah,
and a lot of people like will at least recognize each other. Like you've seen one of
mhm.
their videos at some point, and like we're all kind of doing the same thing. So it's just like we get
Yeah, and
it.
there's a lot of helpfulness with folks. Like, folks
Yeah,
are willing.
yeah,
You reach
exactly.
out. It's people are willing to help. And I was talking with Kelsey about the development end, and she said the indie publishers are the same way.
Yeah,
Like, everybody, just like Matt Finch was one of the people who helped her with her license, and it's like they don't see themselves as enemies, which is
yeah.
it's a nice experience. It's kind of fun. So but you did go to PAX this past
Right.
winter, where you were having breakfast, and as you said, you had a totally normal first tabletop role playing game experience. Everyone who ever goes to a role playing game convention should expect to have this exact experience. So you were having breakfast with Professor Dungeon Master and Stephen Glicker from Roll for Combat. Who else was there? Was anybody else there in that at that one?
Uh, at the breakfast, it was those two guys and Mrs. Professor Dungeon Master, as she
Okay.
goes by, and my wife, Grace World Destroyer, were there.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're so there, and you see a rather well known figure pop in, eating breakfast, and
This is right.
it is Matt Mercer who's just
Yeah.
there. So why not? But I love how you were like, you were so everyone at that point.
Hmm.
And I just say everyone's like everybody who's not like, well, these people are awful for the game. Like, you're just like everyone. Okay, do I go bug him while he's eating breakfast? Do I not do it? Like, I admire your restraint, because I would have like wolfed down my French toast and been over and be like, "Hi," and just grabbed the chair and sat down. Um, because otherwise I would have run away. But you actually, after breakfast, you saw they were going to end, and you said hello, and you had a really good experience just meeting him at that point, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I think we touched on this very early in the session,
Uh huh.
but as I was kind of like mid introducing myself, Matt sort of interjected and like said, "Oh, yeah, Bob the World Builder," and recognized my channel, of course, which was crazy because it's like I wonder which videos he's seen. Like
Uh
it's
huh.
probably just the walking 24 miles one or whatever
Yeah.
that like that other people know me for. So. Um, yeah, I don't know. And but it was just totally out of the blue. Like, as we were planning to see his talk that day at the con, and it just so happened that like we were just literally in the right place at the right time. Like, I think about it how like the restaurant, the way it was situated, like we could have just been in a different section and not even known he was there. Like the
Mm-hmm.
way it was just literally laid out. So we just yeah couldn't get more right place, right time than that. So.
A rather interesting chat came in. Can someone please? I'm sorry, I'm totally distracted. I just ran out of gas with my daughter. I have contacted family police. I did everything. I walked to a gas station with gas can to get help. No one will help. It's been hours. I'm having a feeling this might be a spam bot.
That
So
sounds like it.
it
That's
sounds
weird
like
that they're in a live stream, but
roll for persuasion. I do have it said there's no moderation, so anybody can come in. But it's just kind of like this is how I know I might have made it. So
oh yeah,
because
when you
first
start
on
getting
you're
the
on, and then the
spam
bots
channels in
kind
there.
of show up. Because someone's going to put out their Venmo link pretty soon. So that'll be fun. I'm going to have to turn moderation on. Thanks, Bob. It's always Bob. So this is gonna be what the frick is going on here? Yeah. So, but you did have this great meeting, and I like how like his handler was saying, "No, sir, I am a real person." This is a very odd place to be asking for help. I'm just pointing that out,
Yeah, I think
and
that's the end, the
and
goal of it here.
right, and I'm vaguely familiar with this. So um, you have this conversation with Matt Mercer. His handler's kind of like shooing him off because it just felt like Matt would stay there forever talking with you. Um,
Yeah, we were going on for a couple minutes, and it was mostly Matt talking with Steven and Professor because I feel like I was kind of just like
yeah,
like doe-eyed or whatever,
yeah,
you know. But yeah, and so it was a fun little chat, like joking about a little bit of joking about like thumbnails using Matt's face, etc.
uh huh,
But then yeah, the whoever he was with there was like, oh, would you guys want to get a picture? And yeah, I do feel like that was kind of to speed things along. But
uh
I'm
huh,
so glad they asked because as I said in my little video recounting this, I wasn't gonna like push it anymore. Like this was already so cool.
yeah,
So I'm really glad they gave us that opportunity to get a little pic. And I think that lent a lot of like credence to it. I can't imagine how if I had made a video about this but didn't have photo evidence, how many people would have been like, "That never
okay,
happened," blah blah.
okay.
So yeah.
This is John saying, "I'm a subscriber. I'm very sorry for bothering you guys." Hi, John. This is interesting. I don't know where you are. You're in Arkansas. Um, like I'm not exactly sure how I can reach out to do stuff. Sometimes now people are asking me using the Dalton Gang. This is a very interesting conversation that we got involved in. Um, so for my yes, I don't know where you are. You said you walked to a gas station. This is an interesting way to reach out for help. You obviously have internet connection. Um, so if you can contact your emergency services to bring you something or AAA to bring you gas, that would be really good. So, because a YouTube live stream's an interesting place to ask for help. Um, and the pastor in me's going, okay, I have to respond to this. I have to respond to this. Um, which is fine. But that's the idea. Call the police or call Trip Night Emergency Services. That's what they're there for. You're also in Arkansas. And you do have internet connection. So please use those to get help. Um, so I'm so distracted now. I'm sorry.
No, no
Um,
problem. I understand it's a concerning situation
like
if true, but even if
yes.
true, we can do nothing.
Well,
That
I
is the
have
unfortunate
to
truth here.
assume that it's true because that's
Right.
kind of like my vocational calling, even though I know half the time I'm being lied to. Um, so yes, I have a direct connection with God. Can you get him gas? I said call AAA. That's the best I can do right now. Um, oh my gosh, that's just such a strange. That's a really weird occurrence. It's very strange. So please call. Uh, please call your emergency services in Arkansas, and hopefully they'll be able to help you, because I don't want people stuck with their daughter out in the middle of nowhere. How many levels of cleric are you, Wes? Well, I've been here for 20 years, so I guess that means I'm level 20, but I'm really bad at it. So we'll also do that. An hour ago, my family, I was hoping someone could help with gas. Yeah, I'm like, from here, I can't do anything, John. I'm really sorry. Um, wow. I am so, like, that just hijacked the whole stream. Um, note to self: need moderators because problem needs to be tackled. Consecrated. Probably not the best way to handle this right now. Um, so you meet you go and you try to get into Matt Mercer's talk.
Yeah. So the short story of that is he was leading this talk. It was like a keynote kind of presentation for the con for PAX, and we showed up a half an hour early, but we still couldn't make it in because they had already cut off the line at that point, unfortunately,
Yeah.
to get in.
So you, Professor Dungeon Master, is locked out. So just
Yeah.
good. Paxu now becomes an enemy that you slay in Deathbringer. So, but you get blocked up, but then you get this weird text message.
Well, okay, yeah, right. So that's how the day progressed. It was, I got a DM on Twitter from the creator of, the current like lead designer of Daggerheart RPG.
Okay.
So I don't think there was any like connection. Like I don't think they knew I met Matt. I should have brought it up, I guess.
Yeah, I met Matt. Sure. Uh-huh.
but yeah, I don't know if that had anything to do with it. They just knew, and I guess here's the context. I was going to meet these people the next day. I was going to meet this same creator designer the next day to talk about their other game, Candela Obscura. But I guess since they knew I was at PAX and they were
Okay.
running this playtest and they already had like some people on board, they were like, "Oh, maybe Bob will want to play," and they
Okay.
asked me. And so I got to hop into a playtest session of Daggerheart RPG as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's why, like, again, it's hard to weigh some of these, like, when you asked about the best experience,
Yeah,
gaming
it's
experience of the year, like, that was another cool one where it's like, wow, here's the lead designer running this session. And that's where I, got to meet, well, actually, yeah, just prior, just earlier at the con, I did run into Ginny and another creator, so Ginny D and Antonio D'Amico, Pointy
okay.
Hat. So two other YouTube people who then were both also in this playtest.
Had you met Ginny before that?
That's what I was saying, like just prior
Okay.
at the con,
But like
basically,
you
just
just
very
met her at
briefly.
the con that first time.
Yeah.
So
Well,
folks,
and actually similar to Professor DM,
okay.
like I've been in her comment section
Yeah.
and vice versa. Maybe I don't know if but we've like chatted online a little bit on like Twitter. I think prior to that was it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Hey folks, let's let John go. You don't need to be mocking him anymore. We'll hope that he gets some help for that. I'm a little sensitive about stuff like that.
Fair.
So please. So you're sitting in this room. You're playing a game that's with the lead designer. Who is what the lead designer's name is again? I'm a little
Spencer Stark.
Okay, Spencer Stark. So you're playing with the lead designer. As Professor Dungeon Master pointed out, very bold move going 2d12. And you're sitting in this room and you're with Professor Dungeon Master, the lead designer, Ginny D. Was Matt Mercer there? Was he playing too?
Well, wait. So this is So I don't want to cross the
streams.
wires
Okay.
here. We were with Professor DM that morning. He did not try to go into Matt's talk with us.
Oh,
I
okay.
think they were
Okay.
going to show up maybe like at the actual time if there was still room.
Gotcha.
But we went early, so that's kind of where we parted ways with them. And then I got this message. So I'm not sure what Professor DM was doing that afternoon. Unfortunately, he wasn't in the Daggerheart session.
Because he's not in the Daggerheart session.
Yeah, so it would have been great to have his perspective on it, I think. Actually, I don't think it was the same day, but like he did get to play like the D&D VTT
Yes, he was
and
very
further in
excited
development.
about that.
Yeah, and I wasn't, able to do that one. It's like there's only so much time at a con,
I
unfortunately.
know, it's
But
crazy.
it was really cool that, yeah, nonetheless, it's still an awesome experience.
So,
With Yeah, Spencer Stark was running. The other lead designer of Candela Obscura,
okay.
Rowan Hall, was also playing in the session. I'm not
Okay.
sure if she's also working on Daggerheart or not. I imagine like to some degree.
Gotcha.
And then Ginny and Antonio. If you're familiar with Pointy Hat, is a
Yeah.
very popular D&D channel these
Okay.
days. Yeah.
Okay. So this is you get invited to this thing like so what is your expectation of what it's going to be like to get access to this room as you're going over to it? Like your imagination just running away with you at this point?
Sort of. So it's like it's also just like a meeting room in a hotel.
Yeah.
So it's like, and my very first job was literally like setting up these kind of meetings in a
Mm-hmm.
hotel where I work. So it's kind of funny always like having one of these experiences where I'm in one of these rooms again. But yeah, we got into the hallway. Like they told us the number in that message, and then we saw Antonio waiting outside the room. The door was closed though, and we were there like 10 minutes early maybe, but he was like, "Hey, I think it's like locked or something." So but I just went up to the door and like opened it and peeked in, and lo and behold they were there, and they were like,
Okay.
"Oh, hey guys." So we just like got right in. And then so actually yeah, how much of a classic D&D scenario is that, where the players are like thinking a door is locked or something and speculating for too long before they actually try it. Um,
There's got to be
but
security,
anyway,
right? They have to block people off. Nope, just poke your head in. Sure, sit down.
yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, we got in, and I mean, and they kind of gave us the lowdown. It was definitely, it was a play test, but it was also for some kind of promotional material they're preparing, because they
Okay.
were recording. They didn't like have us mic'd up or anything, but they
Okay.
were recording video like occasionally. Like there were a couple
Gotcha.
clips where they had a camera guy like going around the room and like getting shots of us playing this. Um, but it's funny, yeah, just thinking about the expectations for sort of like the session itself.
Mm-hmm.
I was really expecting they would be like, okay, here's a pre-made character, take a look at it for a second, go over the core mechanic, and then we would just kind of get in and go. But they really walked through like everything first,
Okay.
where we sat down, they talked about some of the core rules and like the kind of overarching, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I guess just perspectives, like the
Okay.
guiding principles maybe of the
Yeah.
game. And then we made our own characters, and that took a good chunk of time. But I'm glad we did, because it was really fun to kind of like see what that was like and see how it's different using these
Mm-hmm.
cards
Mm-hmm.
and things, which is fairly unique even among other like tabletop fantasy games.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then yeah, and then when we finally got to playing, we actually like took a break to go get food.
Okay.
Like individually, we kind of like split up and went our separate ways for a minute, and then like came back to begin the actual session. um, but it was a lot of fun, and like I said, we were all playing our own characters that we had just made, and the GM used that break time to actually devise a scenario based on the characters we had just made.
Oh, cool.
So it was very like a tailored experience as well. It was
Oh,
really cool.
that's really neat. But as you're
Yeah.
sitting there doing this whole thing, and the people are videoing you, and you're getting the stuff, is your somewhere in the back of your brain just going like, "This is not a normal experience"?
Yeah, I mean, when the camera would like come around, I guess the side of the table where I could see him, I
Uh
was
huh.
like, "Oh yeah, I'm like on camera right now." So I'm sure there's gonna be clips where like they need to cut it where I like look right at the lens or something. But
Bob. It's always
but
Bob. So.
but yeah. Yeah, but I mean overall it's like it's kind of the weird, like with me meeting Matt,
Mm-hmm.
some of the comments I saw in that video were like, wow, Bob had the same reaction that like I would have had meeting him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's weird to think that people think that way of me, but at the same time, even when like when like other people came up to me at PAX and were like, "Hey, I love your videos," and like it's cool to like see you in person, blah blah. Like it's also the same experience for me as the creator, because it's like I am just singularly scripting, recording, posting
Mm-hmm.
these videos, and like I respond to people in comments, but I
Yeah.
don't see you either. It's actually
Yeah.
even like you even know what I look like. I don't even know. But it's like I know you're there, and I know I'm like talking to you like as I'm making these videos. So yeah, it's really, I see Rob broke the fourth wall. It is really this like fourth wall breaking experience, like for me as much as anybody else. And I'm sure like, I mean, I guess Matt has probably had that experience thousands of times, so he's
Yeah.
probably over it by now. But for me, it is still like very exciting when somebody would come up and just say that they watch my stuff. And yeah, I just always try to be like, thank you for watching, because that's why I get to do this. So yeah.
So like, what's funny, Stephen Glicker was at the Philadelphia Area Gaming Convention, and
Okay.
I saw him. I didn't talk to him. One of my friends was there, was playing the Play-Doh game with him around the table, and Stephen Glicker killed all of his kids in the game. But he was like, I was talking a Roll for Combat. It's like, and nobody recognized me. He was like a little upset. My friends actually did, so they talked to him afterwards. I got to say hello for a little bit and thank him for stuff.
Nice.
I thought that was hysterical. But yeah, there's moments where like somebody actually recognized me. That's really weird.
Yeah.
It's strange. Going to the game itself, what was kind of the coolest aspect of the game as you were
Oh
playing?
man. The coolest wow, I can't say that for some reason right now. Coolest part of the game was definitely the action tokens, because it was just something I hadn't experienced before.
Okay.
Apparently, this is an element from, well, maybe not originating in, but also used in the Conan RPG,
Okay.
where the GM, or some version of it anyway, where the GM, or rather the players, as they do things, like give the GM a token, basically. Like, I've taken an action, here's a thing.
Okay.
And then throughout the combat, the GM is basically building up a number of these tokens. And then on their turn, they kind of cash those in to do different effects, like with the bad guys.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's wild.
Yeah, so I haven't played the Conan RPG, but when I described it to another creator, they were like, "Oh yeah, Conan." Okay. So I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, I didn't know there was a thing.
There's nothing
But
new under the sun, Bob. Everybody's
I
just
know, yeah.
rehashing.
So
So
it makes sense that it must have come from somewhere. But
that's
yeah,
really cool, though. So like you can do really cool things, but every success that you do, you're
yeah.
watching the pile grow up. You're like, oh crap,
Yeah,
we're
so
gonna
it's
get
this
toasted.
really strong, like, back and forth. And I think, yeah, Doom Points, there it is. Slit in the comments,
There you go.
who's a regular commenter on my videos. Cool to see him here. And yeah, so Conan, he's also saying, is a 2d20 system. So they also use that aspect of, 2d12 for Daggerheart. And I think in Conan, I learned it's like, yeah, so it's instead of fear and hope in Daggerheart, in Conan, it's like doom and maybe glory or something like
Gotcha.
that.
Gotcha.
And generally speaking, the DM is like using these doom points, I guess, or fear tokens, whatever like, word is being used to do cooler stuff with the enemies, and it is all very literally balanced then, because it's just based on the number of cool things the players have already done.
So it's like, yeah,
Usually,
you
anyway.
can do these things, and now
Yeah,
my turn. That's
yeah.
so cool. I love that idea. So
Yeah, it's a neat way to do it, and it basically also allowed initiative to be wide open instead of like, instead of rolling initiative beforehand, or what my table had been doing prior was just going around the table usually, because it's just a little quicker. Um, but in this, it was like there was no initiative.
oh really?
Anybody could just basically, well, I guess it was still, I don't know if there was a matter of like how many things you could do. I guess you still had maybe you had a limit on
Okay.
action tokens that you had as
Okay.
well. But basically anybody could just go like, "Hey, I have an idea. I want to go next." And it was like, "Okay." And then you
Okay.
just slide your token over, and you're going now. And so it was very fluid. But yeah, in that way there almost wasn't much of like a round structure. So I'm going to be
Interesting.
interested to see how they like articulate that in the rules. Um, because I feel like it could get out of hand, like if you don't
Yeah.
have some kind of structure. But it felt very open,
Easy
and
D6
that
does
made
the
it a lot
same
of fun.
thing. Players just always go before adversaries. That's kind of the same idea.
Okay, yeah,
But your actions aren't
yeah,
aren't contributing to the amount of hurt that's going to be dealt out at you, which
yeah.
I think that's absolutely hysterical. Now I want to put that into every game I play. Um, it's really cool. Like, did you ever have a moment you're like, well, goodbye character sheet. Like, I'm just done now. Like, it's like in that time of playing, did you get to that point where you're like, oh crud, I'm doomed and my character's gonna die?
Oh, no. Fortunately, the only combat, so there was clearly like a second combat plan that was kind of like the main battle, but
Okay.
our really only interface with the combat rules was a very basic, like, hey, here are some small monsters. I think they were actually gnomes that
Okay.
just like accosted us and tried to steal our stuff. So we fought
Gotcha.
them off. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. And I know that,
But it was
like,
a cool battle.
I'm going to put you on the spot because you did get invited to play a play test. And so,
Sure.
and the game is in testing. Let's qualify that. Was there any part of the game, you kind of already mentioned initiative, but was there any kind of the part of the game you're going, I would like to see this tweaked a little bit more?
Oh man, there must have been something because I remember Grace, because Grace was also there with me. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to play, but she was
Okay.
like there just to like watch most of it. And afterward, she did also come away with a very positive opinion. She was like, "Yeah, I would totally want to run this game."
Yeah.
But she had a really good point about the way something ran, and I can't remember it now. But there were a couple sticking points. So yeah,
Where you could still, it's still, they're still tweaking it. It's gonna get there.
yeah, very much so.
Did it feel fun rolling the D12s?
Yeah, I guess that that was interesting too, because I was also like I have a little like dice box
Mm-hmm.
that I brought to the con. Really, I mean that I use at the table too,
Yeah.
and I only have one D12 in there, but I also have this really goofy, technically 12-sided die that's like this, not that big, but like this big, with like random dungeon corridors or
Oh yeah,
rooms or
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
corners on it
Yeah, for
where you
solo
can
play,
like
yeah.
procedurally generate something.
Mm-hmm.
So I was using that in my in my regular D12. So that was fun.
It's like your D12's like
Because
got
it
dust
also,
on
I
it.
guess, yeah, I need to preface that it also does have like tiny numbers on each face.
So
So I was
you
able
didn't
to
just like make up a
use
number. Yeah, that's a 12 now.
no.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a 20. It's a
Yeah.
12-sided die, Bob. Oh, sorry, that's a 12. I like games where you can use things because D12s will hurt someone if you throw them at them. Which is why I want more uses for D12s. Got a couple questions for you, and then we'll get ready to
Sure.
wrap up. And this is something King Eric asks a lot. Did you ever play Hero Quest, that board game that's kind of a gateway to D&D?
I have not played Hero Quest. Yeah, I've heard of it, and I would see it in my local game store when I lived in Maryland. But yeah, never. And I think I remember commercials for it,
Oh yeah,
even from back in the day.
yeah.
But yeah, and it was, I don't know, it's one of those things that was interesting, but for whatever reason never got around to it. And I don't know like of any of the people who I like play with regularly or anything. I don't think anybody has it. So yeah, just never
I've
made it into my sphere.
I'm in your boat. I never played it either. So, like, Eric, has
Yeah.
anybody actually played that game yet? Because you've asked that question a lot, and I feel bad. And then Roll for Traco wants to know if you actually framed your character sheet.
I haven't framed it, but I do have, I guess, I don't know if it's every character I've ever played, but I have most of my character sheets just in a folder that is kind of like a little record. Yeah.
Okay, so you got
Not
a little.
exactly a scrapbook or anything, but just a folder where I like save all them. And it's fun because I'm actually pulling one of them out now that I played in a mini campaign probably like 5 years ago that Grace ran. And I'm gonna, and it was like a level 1 to 5, like 5e campaign,
Okay.
and Grace is about to start a new 5e campaign, and I'm gonna like bring back this character, but they've been down leveled for some cool backstory reasons.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, so I was like referring to that old sheet as I'm rewriting a new one now, and yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's really neat. I hope that works out pretty good. So, I got.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a couple of their Runehammer's here. Hi, Runehammer.
We got a question from yeah.
Yeah, I got a question from Runehammer. Bob, do you think Daggerheart has
Ooh.
a real lasting potential based on your play?
I think that's it. I guess it's like you could look at this two ways. Lasting potential with like people's groups and lasting potential like in the wider TTRPG space. I
Okay.
think I think I definitely see it sticking with people's groups just because of the strong connections that I feel like people have with Critical Role
Okay.
and with now Daring to Impress, and because it is definitely built for longer campaigns.
Right.
So people who play this, like, yeah, you could obviously, like, we played a one shot and it was fun, but I do think people who are going to pick up this game and expect to play, uh, for a couple months at a time or whatever, running this game. So I think at people's table, yeah, it can stick. And I think it's a very fun. I think it was fun. So I think they're gonna like the game. I think people who buy it and play it will by and large enjoy it.
Okay.
But then does it have things that are gonna like shock people and like make changes in the industry? Maybe is like I feel like the real sticking. I don't know, but I feel like it could, because like if, for example, they stick with the action tokens as their initiative, like
Mm-hmm.
it feels like this unique and innovative mechanic because I haven't heard of it before.
Right.
Now apparently it totally was around with like Conan RPG and stuff, but I think Critical Role, just because of their audience, will have the power basically to show off some ideas that will at least seem very innovative and original, whether or not they are. And for that reason, I think it could really stick,
Okay.
because if they put some of those ideas in, people will, at least it'll be the first time that they've interfaced with some of those rules, whatever they may be. And even if they don't continue to play Daggerheart, maybe they would stick with those rules and, homebrew it into whatever they are playing, or it could inspire other designers who, again, like haven't heard of Conan RPG, but they've heard of Daggerheart now, and hey, and then they're going to design something based on that too. So will it stick? I don't know, but I think it will stick with people's groups, and I think it could stick beyond that.
As a
But yeah,
commercial entity, it could stick beyond that.
yeah,
And I mean, it's about to be a really crowded space because you have Tales of the Valiant, you have D&D 6e,
true.
and we're just gonna call it 6e,
Yeah,
and then you have Daggerheart supposed to be coming out at the same
yeah.
time.
Well, and I
Yeah.
guess I would say too, it's like, yeah, because Daggerheart is kind of, even though it's like not compatible with 5e, and or like, we got MCDM RPG, whatever that'll actually be called. They're all kind of doing similar things.
Mm-hmm.
I think Daggerheart though is really also trying to be like very much like 5e and Tales of the Valiant, in that thematically it's like kind of a kitchen sink fantasy.
Okay.
Whereas like at least MCDM is like, hey, we're really just focused on tactical combat. So we're going to do
Yes.
that really, really, really well. But I think that, yeah, I think Daggerheart's kind of trying to keep it very broad. So it could be hard to make waves truly that way, since it's like been done over and over. But yeah,
What we know is that things are going to get very, very interesting in the next year or so.
they will. Yeah, 2024 is going to be a big year.
And hopefully it'll be a much more enjoyable, interesting than it was in 2023
Yeah,
because that
yeah.
was
Hopefully,
insane.
yeah, a
So
big year because there's lots of new cool things coming out and things that I'm excited to try out.
that would be really good. And thank you. For folks who just stopped at Gamers on Games, stopped by and said hello. Thank you, Dave. Good to see you. Um, Ethan S pointed out DC 20. I haven't played that yet. You did play it, correct?
Yeah, so
That's
that
on
was
your list?
another session where, yeah, like Dungeon Coach is one of these creators that I've talked to for a long time, because he and I actually started our channels. Actually, I think he started his later than me.
Okay.
But he like we were like communicating in the very early days of both of our channels. So yeah, it's been really cool to see him working on this, and I got to play in a session that he ran of that again, kind of capturing the same like kitchen sink fantasy stuff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I think yeah. But again, it's like, that's why I made that video recently, because each of these games are still doing their own little things that are cool.
And you play that game and then you tweak that idea and throw it into the other game. So I have a whole
Yeah.
bunch of stuff in my basic fantasy RPG game that's not core rules, but that's what we have at the table,
Nice.
and it's a lot of fun. Folks are having a great time. So thank you everybody for stopping by and for chatting. I've had a great time talking with you, Bob. So thank you so much for coming on and for coming in. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for interrupting as we tried to help field questions for help in Arkansas.
Yeah, hopefully they solve that problem.
That was new. I do hope, if that's I mean, they said they were a subscriber. I'll have to go check my subscribers. So I do hope that gets done. It's an interesting place to look for help right away in the middle of a live stream. So we'll hope that emergency services gets to help there. And folks, thank you for chatting and being around. It was great. Runehammer, thank you so much for stopping on. I saw your DM therapy or GM therapy at Philadelphia Area Gaming Convention. It was absolutely hysterical. I loved it. which is a lot of fun. So we'd love to talk with you sometime too. But Bob, thank you. I'm going to close out with these folks, and then I will hope you stay on the line. I'll just say goodbye and say thank you properly, and everybody say
All
bye,
right.
Bob.
See you guys.
All right, that was a lot of fun. It was an interesting interlude in the middle. We do hope that he does get some help. I
Little. I did see
I'm putting
someone.
Bob
I
back
didn't
on.
see. I didn't see the John person say it, but I did see someone else say that like they must have. Oh yeah, like I have Cash App. Yeah, so
Oh yeah, they
this
did.
is what
They're
he said.
asking.
I
They're
have
definitely asking for help. I mean, that's going to be the ask. I have those all the time.
right.
But
Yeah,
if
so
it's a
I
real
I
person,
feel like
I'm
anytime
concerned.
it's like the sending money, like how would that have helped them get gas that police couldn't help them get gas? You know what I mean?
Well, and
So
they're
it's like it was
they
definitely
obviously have internet
yeah.
connections, so there's a little bit going on.
Yeah,
All
it
right.
was definitely not genuine.
I'm going to go back to my camera. You stop talking because you're in my ear and nobody can hear you at that point. So I'll
Cool.
be back on to talk with you, which is good. Folks, I had a blast talking with Bob. That was such a good time. Thank you so much for the awesome comments in chat, for jumping on. Thank you for stopping to call out the person who was jumping into the stream when I asked you to. That means a lot to me as well. Just had a great time. Have a lot of things coming up on channel. I am going to be talking with DM Scotty because Wasted World is coming out, and he was gracious enough to send me a copy of the PDF so I could read through. So I have something to talk about with him. I will be purchasing that at some point very soon so that I can get that as a full review. Also going to be looking at 321 Action, which is a game I got at Philadelphia Area Gaming Convention. I'll be doing a full review of that. I talked a little bit about it on Monday. And I am still in the midst of planning for EcclesiaCon come April 12 through 14. Going to have some rather interesting games that are going to be played there. So if you are in the Palmyra, New Jersey area or the greater Philadelphia area and want to come out for a couple of cool days of gaming, that should be a lot of fun. Someone's running a Pathfinder 2e funnel, which apparently it's supposed to be really hard to die in Pathfinder 2e, so I'm looking forward to see how that all works. But that should be a really good time, and if you're able to do that, please come on out. And until we see each other again, folks, happy playing, everyone.